Holocaust discussions typically center on death tolls, military campaigns, prison camps, and eventual freedom. Yet we seldom consider, what did it mean to inhabit a female body while navigating that unthinkable horror? Picture surviving such brutality without basic hygiene supplies, clean water, or even fabric scraps, while still being forced to labor, remain upright, and persist. Today, we illuminate the silent anguish and quiet strength of countless women throughout the Holocaust by examining something as fundamental as menstruation. Within the pandemonium and barbarity of the death camps, every aspect of humanity faced assault. For women, however, this violence operated on multiple levels. Menstrual periods, already cloaked in cultural stigma before the war began, transformed into symbols of degradation, voicelessness, and incomprehensible endurance. The challenge of menstruation during the Holocaust extended far beyond the absence of hygiene products. It involved the complete elimination of personal space, self-respect, and empathy. Camp authorities neither regarded periods as medical concerns nor even recognized their existence. Women faced complete abandonment to handle this alone, trapped in filthy, packed quarters where illness and parasites flourished. Well before the Holocaust began, menstruation remained shrouded in secrecy. Ancient civilizations held varying beliefs. Some honored it, others dreaded it. Certain indigenous cultures viewed it as sacred. In contrast, other societies segregated women in special tents or separate dwellings. Throughout medieval Europe, menstruation was connected to concepts of corruption and contamination. By the early 20th century, menstrual supplies weren't broadly available. Mass-produced pads only gained popularity in the 1920s, while tampons didn't reach commercial markets until the 1930s. Even then, they remained costly and poorly distributed. In countryside regions and among impoverished communities, women continued using fabric scraps, cloth pieces, or improvised solutions. When women arrived at camps, they entered these nightmarish locations already ill-equipped for what lay ahead. Within the camps, women fashioned makeshift pads from whatever material they possessed, frequently from underclothing distributed upon entry. These precious cloth fragments were treasured and concealed like precious items. They underwent repeated use, cleaned secretly when water existed, and hidden beneath straw bedding to air dry. Yet cleaning wasn't always feasible. Water faced strict limits, and in certain locations, only kitchen areas had access, making it monitored and unreachable. Survivor accounts describe women stealing nighttime moments, attempting to rinse cloths or clean themselves with paper scraps or foliage. Others remember simply bleeding through garments, completely helpless. Women attempted everything possible to prevent visible stains, which frequently resulted in public humiliation. Many layered clothing to hide bleeding, though this proved nearly impossible during sweltering summers when additional garments became intolerable. Pain relief didn't exist, nor hot compresses, nor private restroom facilities. Only a woman, her physical reality, and a battle to endure without comfort. For adolescent girls, particularly those experiencing their first period, the psychological damage was immense. Many were torn from their mothers with no guidance available. When menstruation began, it delivered not only physical discomfort, but terror and bewilderment. In this grim setting, mature women provided direction. They shared their limited knowledge, consoled girls through initial cycles, and offered emotional comfort despite their own torment. These weren't minor gestures. They represented acts of motherly compassion and collective humanity in a location where both had nearly vanished. Then something even more troubling occurred. After several months, numerous women's periods simply ceased. Today's medical experts acknowledge that trauma and undernourishment can halt menstruation. The weakened body redirects energy away from fertility. However, this alone cannot account for the remarkably high amenorrhea rates, estimated above 95% among camp women. Multiple survivors have described pills forced into their palms or unknown substances mixed into meals. One survivor recalled being compelled to consume a pink tablet upon entrance. Others remembered guards distributing soup containing powdery pink additives served exclusively to women. These accounts correspond with research indicating Nazi officials conducted trials and used methods to eliminate fertility without women's awareness. Papers from a 1942 Nazi leadership conference exposed plans for widespread sterilization conducted in secret. Researchers received orders to avoid documenting chemical sterilization experiments. Some scholars believe hormone-disrupting chemicals were introduced via food or injections. Regardless of technique, the outcome was evident. Menstruation disappeared, along with hopes of future childbearing for many. The impact proved enduring. Numerous camp survivors encountered reproductive difficulties. Research conducted years afterward showed alarming miscarriage rates, stillbirth frequencies, and infertility levels. Among 197 documented survivor pregnancies, nearly 25% ended in miscarriage, while over 6% resulted in stillbirth. For many, the trauma left irreversible harm. The damage wasn't solely physical. The emotional burden of infertility after surviving genocide proved crushing. For some women, family restoration represented their singular hope during camp imprisonment. When that possibility was stolen, it created another invisible wound in their narrative. Women's health deteriorated drastically due to the harsh and contaminated camp environment. These facilities were never intended for human habitation, much less women's specific bodily requirements. Functional sewage systems didn't exist, and human waste frequently accumulated in and around living quarters. Filth became an environmental reality. The atmosphere itself reeked of abandonment. Personal cleanliness, something most of us consider automatic, became a forgotten luxury. Bathing opportunities were scarce, and in numerous camps were completely denied to prisoners. Water faced severe restrictions, and when obtainable was often contaminated or ice-cold. Women lacked soap, clean fabric, and frequently even vessels for holding water. Simple acts like hand-washing or cloth rinsing became impossible tasks. This extreme hygiene absence left women extremely susceptible to various infections. Female anatomy, by its very nature, becomes particularly vulnerable to bacterial proliferation when exposed to unsanitary environments. Consequently, bladder infections became widespread alongside bacterial vaginosis, fungal infections, and other painful ailments. These weren't mild annoyances. Without medical care or rest periods, they evolved into persistent infections characterized by intense discomfort, burning sensations, swelling, discharge, and relentless pain. Temperatures fluctuated, and inflammation made even simple movements excruciating. Still, these women had to continue. They waited in endless lines, survived roll calls in bitter cold, and performed demanding labor with their bodies in constant distress. Each step brought struggle, yet no space, time, or compassion existed for recovery. Women's camp suffering held distinct qualities, not in scale, but in type. Both men and women faced unspeakable cruelty, but women confronted an additional layer of torment. The reality of surviving in bodies requiring care and comprehension, while receiving neither. It transcended mere death avoidance. It involved managing pain, bleeding, and emotional stress without resources, privacy, or relief. It meant experiencing shame for something entirely natural, while being compelled to continue as if nothing were amiss. No hygiene supplies existed, no peaceful spaces, and no understanding. The entire system aimed to eliminate individuality. For women, it also directly attacked their biological essence. Despite everything, women created hidden support systems. They cared for each other when nobody else would. Mature women mentored younger ones through the terrifying realities of their developing bodies. They exchanged clothes, provided whispered guidance, sacrificed food, and demonstrated affection during moments when affection risked punishment. When freedom finally arrived, the suffering didn't conclude, it transformed. The outside world expected survivors to resume normalcy. Yet for many women, their relationship with their bodies had been permanently damaged. Some had never known healthy cycles and couldn't understand what normal should feel like. Others had completely lost their periods and never recovered them. For many women, childlessness became an unexpected sorrow in subsequent years. Survivors who had envisioned motherhood learned that the trauma, both physical and psychological, had stolen that future. Medical professionals didn't always comprehend what had occurred, and psychological support was virtually non-existent. No formal vocabulary existed for the complex grief they carried. The grief of stolen time, damaged health, and lost possibilities. Society pressed them to progress, to marry, to bear children if possible, and to help reconstruct a shattered world. Yet nobody inquired what they required for healing. This narrative isn't solely about suffering. It concerns resilience. It's about women who, despite every attempt to destroy them, safeguarded one another, adapted under unimaginable circumstances, and silently resisted through survival. When we preserve these stories, we're not merely completing historical records. We are amplifying voices that never received the chance to discuss this aspect of their lives. We're celebrating strength in its most quiet, most human expression. May we never forget that even in humanity's darkest places, women discovered ways to maintain their identity and connection to each other.